Awesome. So thanks everyone for coming out to acing your next app critique. We hope you will all learn something new today from our amazing speaker, Minjun. So before we begin, we would like to acknowledge that the Waterloo, Kitchener, and Cambridge campuses of the University of Waterloo are situated on the Haldimand Tract, land that was granted to the Haudenosaunee of the Six Nations of the Grand River and are within the territory of the neutral Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee peoples. So before we dive in, just a quick introduction. We are UWUX, and our goal is to grow the design community and empower designers to support and inspire each other through community engagements. So throughout the year, we hold a variety of events, so feel free to stay in touch on our social media to keep up to date on what's happening.
Yeah, and we also just want to say we are currently hiring for fall 2022. So applications are due August 3rd, which is next week. And we're hiring for roles like DI coordinator, UXR coordinator, logistics, content, and also branding coordinator. And anyone from UW are eligible, as well as people who have graduated within 2 years. So if you're interested, feel free to click on the link and apply. We're super excited to hear from you.
And just a couple of housekeeping things. So throughout the session, if you have any questions for Minjun, feel free to leave them on our Slido. So you can see the link on the screen right now, slido.com, and just use the code on screen, or you can scan the QR code, leave whatever questions you have, and Minjun will get to them at the end of the session. And without further ado, I will hand it over to Minjun. Feel free to take it away.
Yeah, let me share my screen first so everyone can see my slide. So can everyone see my full screen presentation here? Okay. Yeah, sounds good. So hi everyone. Thanks for joining today's sessions. And I'm so excited to talk about how to prepare for your next app critique session. So to begin with, I want to say all these kind of opinions and tips and tricks I'm going to share on these sessions are my personal lessons, and they are not representative of any of my employer. So which means I will share my honest learning and lessons towards how I prepare for my app critique session when I was interviewing with a different company, and hoping by the end of these sessions, you can get something and you can apply some framework into your next app critique session. And also because today's session is a workshop, we are using the workshop format. So during this session, we will going to share out the link to our Figents. So we will do some quick activity between each session. So yeah, feel free. Definitely I will encourage you to join all these kind of live workshop activities throughout the session. So to begin with, I will talk about my journey and what is the app critique and what is the framework I'm using to my app critique session. And I also summarize a list of potential interview questions. And last but not least, I will share some tips for how we can successfully prepare and act in this kind of app critique session. And last, we might have 10 or 15 minutes left, and I can answer all of your questions on Slido. So feel free to post your question on Slido. We will have time to review and answer. So to begin with, what is my design journey? So when I was a little girl, I really want to become a designer or an artist in the future, but I didn't know how to become a designer. So to reach this goal, I actually end up with studying for a while. I got 3 different degrees from 3 different schools. So firstly, I got my bachelor degree in China. So I studied Chinese literature and language, which was a completely different major than the design or UX design. And then I went to UPenn to study learning science and technology, which was my first master's degree in the state. And then I went to another UW in Seattle, where I'm studying human computer interaction design. So I finally got into UX design through my second master's degree, where I built up a foundation in UX design and research. So finally, after a couple years, I studied in the school, I graduated, and then luckily I became a full-time designer after graduation from the school. So I was working at multiple companies through the past few years. So I work at Wayfair warehousing team, where I was designing this kind of warehousing tool for the warehouse employee to make sure that they can complete their job efficiently and safely. And then I joined Amazon Prime, where I was designing this end-to-end customer experience to help our Prime member understand different benefits and engage with our Prime membership. And right now, I'm based in Vancouver, and I joined Microsoft as a product designer. So at my time at Microsoft, I am right now working on everything around the Bing search. So outside my daily job, I love food and coffee, and I'm always looking for this kind of local restaurant and the local coffee shop when I was traveling or moving into a new city. So this is my journey, and let's jump into the most interesting part of this workshop. So let's talk about what is the app critique. So usually, if you are going to interview for a future job, a product design role or UX design job, if you have the interview session for app critique, usually it will be running for 45 to an hour long session. And I think app critique is a great way to evaluate multiple product design skill set, including a hard skill, which is a visual design, interaction design, and product thinking. And the other side, because you have to interact and communicate with the interviewer. So app critique is also a session that can evaluate your collaborations, communication, and also the skill set, like how you can drive the conversation and be comfortable with driving this conversation with your coworker at work. And usually during this app critique session, the interviewer, she or he will be a UX or product designer from the future team you are interviewing with. And during the sessions, sometimes they will going to choose the app for you. But based on my personal experience, I think most of the time they will ask you to select the app on your mobile phone. But because of some policy and some privacy concern, in the most scenario, the interviewer, they won't ask you to critique any app from the finance or anything showing your personal information. Or if you are working at a particular company, they won't ask you to critique the app from your current company. So here is a list of the common app I personally love to critique and prepare before I join into any app critique sessions, which include Spotify, Yelp, Google Map, Airbnb, Amazon, and Instacart. So I think there's another app my friends and we were practicing in our free time for the app critique, like Redfin and Coinbase. So not Coinbase, Redfin, Zillow, this kind of rental or house finding app. But make sure that no matter what kind of app you are going to prepare, make sure you will prepare at least 2 apps before the interview. And because some of the apps are very similar, for example, Google Map or Yelp. So if you prepare one, it's definitely much more easier for you to leverage the framework from the Yelp to the Google Map. So let's talk about what is the app critique framework. Before I want to share this 4-step framework and dive deep into the detail, I want to say, I think there's no wrong or right answer to the framework we are going to use to the app creative session. So this is all the framework I summarize, and I think it's the best for me to leverage it into my product design interview, my app creative session. So feel free to like adapt or change the framework based on your personal preference, because there's definitely no right or wrong answer into the app creative session. So let's jump into the 4-step framework, which include like step 1, establish the high level content. The second one is talk about the first impression through the home screen. The third one is walk through a specific user flow. And last one is always end your app creative session with a summary. So let's talk about like each step into detail. The first one is step 1, establishing the high level context. So I think there's a couple angle you need to mention to walk through to highlight this high level content for the app you are going to critique. So I think one thing I want to say here is don't jump into a specific like design or flow immediately when you're starting your app critique. Always talk about the high level contents before you go into any detail. So it will be a zoom out view first, and then you zoom in and jump into the detail through the entire app critique session. So the first thing you can mention is definitely the problem. So what kind of user problems exist before this app was created or launched? And how do people usually solve this kind of problem before this app was created? And also it's worth for you to briefly mention how does this app solve this problem? So this is one side. You definitely need to talk about what is the problem first, and then you can talk about the business. I think from the business side, this is something you have to do your own research first before you go into any app creative session, because as an outsider from this company, sometimes very hard for us to know about like how does the app make money. So definitely search online about their business strategy for a particular app you're going to critique in advance. So from the business side, there's a couple of things you can consider, like how does the app or how does this company make money and generate revenue? And what is their success metric to evaluate the business outcome for this app? And what is their business strategy? And the other thing you can think about is what makes this app hard to copy. For instance, like from the Facebook, obviously their network effect make Facebook unique and hard to copy in the marketplace. And the other thing is when you talk about the high level context about this app, always mention the user, like who is the user they are designing for, and is there any other different player in this entire ecosystem? Because for some of the two-sided marketplace app like Yelp, Google Map, Airbnb, Redfin, definitely there's more than one part of user they are designing for this app. We also have the customer side and the other like hosts or the people who provide the service. So definitely it's worth for us to mention who are the key player in this entire ecosystem for this kind of two-sided marketplace app. And also you can mention about like what is the use case for this app is designing for. So after you know about like the high level context of the app, I'm going to use one of the example from the Yelp to talk about like how I use this kind of framework to critique Yelp. And we will also have some activity between each step for all of our audience to criticize Spotify on our own. So this is the first thing I will be talking about in the Yelp, which is the problem space. So here is my simple answer. I feel free to like listen and take some note and also just get something you think it will be helpful for you next app critique session. So when I talking about the problem of Yelp, I always say something like, before Yelp was created, people always like use a physical map, or they are searching online or through the word of mouth to find a restaurant. So, and from the business side, it's very hard for the local restaurant to promote their business. So they have to like print out the ad or through the word of mouth to promote their local restaurant business. So the problems early on Yelp was trying to solve was that they want to build a easy to use platform to help our customers, to help our user easily discover and find and search the nearby restaurant, as well as helping our local restaurant to grow their business and generate more revenue. And from the business side, as I mentioned earlier, at the very beginning of the Yelp was Yelp was a platform to help customers find restaurant. However, throughout a few years of development, Yelp is expanding their business from not just becoming a place to help customer finding their local restaurant, but also it become a centralized platform to help our customer discover and find some local business beyond that restaurant. So I think Yao is, and when I mentioned, I think it's worth for us to mention like how they expand their business throughout the years, because this is something you can also see from the design decision they made on their app as well. And so from business side, I also talk about like, I think Yao is making the money in a couple ways. First of all, they can make money through the partnership with this local business, local restaurant, and also through the app they are going to create for this to promote this local business. So they will definitely make the money through helping these local business promote their business on the Yelp platform. Secondly, like they also generate some revenue when the customer makes some transaction through the Yelp. So maybe you are able to, they are able to place an order or make reservation on Yelp, and they will going to create some revenue through such transaction customer create. And I think Yelp is so based on what I mentioned earlier, I think Yelp is definitely designing for a majority of people who are looking for finding and exploring different like local restaurant and local business. And also for these people who are looking for some special or particular like service, such as moving, hair cutting and home remodeling, this kind of service. And Yelp is also really helpful for the travelers who are eager to experience like authentic local food and restaurant. So they can definitely using the Yelp to find a restaurant and shop for the local business. So here come to our first activity is about the Spotify. And we are going to share the links on our chat so everyone can get access to the links. And I think here, like we will using the 5 minutes for the activity where like feel free to grab a sticky note on the Fidget and write down your thoughts on what is the high level content you want to talk about, you want to discuss for Spotify when you are in the app critique session. So we can go into this Figma file. So can everyone see this screen here? Yeah. So, and you can grab the sticky note like here, and let me calculate the time. So we are going to use the 5 minutes to do this activity, and then we will go back to my presentation decks, and I will briefly share my thoughts on like if I'm critique Spotify, what I'm going to talk about for this high level context. Let me see how I can find a clock.
Yeah.
Oh, timer. Yeah, I saw the timer here. Yeah. So let me start timing. Yeah, think about Spotify from different angle, like what is their what is the problem, and what is their like core business, and what is their user, and also think about like through a few years of the product development cycle, is there any new business coming out from Spotify, and like what else, like beyond the music, the Spotify is going to provide for their customer. Okay, we only have 1 second. Yeah. Thanks for everyone to write down the answer here. I see a lot of like great answer for introducing the high level background for Spotify. So so if I'm start to introduce the background of Spotify, definitely I will mention the problem first. That before Spotify was created, there's no like centralized place for people to find or search and browse the music. And most of the people, most of the user, they were using like maybe the MP3, or they have to download the music from the internet to their phone before the Spotify was created. So there's no centralized place. And how, if I want to listen to the music when I was walking on the street, it is a very complicated process, from like searching the music, downloading the music, and then I start listening and find the music on my phone or MP3. And the other side of the problem space, I see some of our audience mention about the musician, the artist side. So especially for these smaller musicians, it's hard for people to know about their music, and it's also, there's no place for these musicians to promote their musics and make the money on their own in this kind of platform. So this is the problem we can mention. And from the business side, I think definitely a lot of our audience mentioned about Spotify. They generate their revenue through the monthly like subscription membership, and also the ad. And the other side, like how does the Spotify they make the business is they also create a lot of like tool for both artists and advertisers. So through the partnership with the artists, musicians, they will get, they can generate and make money through this kind of partnership. And because they have the ad showing up on the platform, they also generate the revenue by creating the tool for these business who want to promote their app on Spotify. So there's some sort of partnership there as well. So for the Spotify business, there's a couple ways we can mention about how they are going to make their revenue. And the other side of the user, we definitely, a lot of audience mentioned about like people who love the music, and who and also for the artists or the musicians who really want to share their music, their audio contents. And the other thing of the business, the other thing of the Spotify is worth for us to mention is right now Spotify is expanding their business from not just the music, the place to search and find the song, but also the place to find the podcasts. And you can also see some newly add like audiobooks on Spotify as well. So it's also worth for us to mention about Spotify is expanding their business from just a play to listening to the music, but they want to become a centralized platform for people to listen everything around the audios. So yeah, I think there's a lot of great answer here about like how Spotify like solve the user problem and what is their business strategy, how they make revenue, as well as the user group. So let me jump into my presentation decks so I can talk about the next step after we're introducing the content. So after you talk about, okay, can everyone see my slide here? Okay, so after you talk about like the high level context from a business user, from the business user and the problem angles, the second step we can talk about is show what is your first impressions when you opening up their home screen, when you opening up the app. So I think here is we can talk briefly about your overall impression on the visual design and what is the overall like design system that this app leverage any like design system or design pattern from iOS like human interface design or the Google material design. And we also can look, we can also looking at their navigation system on the button like menu and talk about like what is your first impression on the overall navigation. And like definitely like you can mention about their information architecture, the IA. And I think there's other things we can also mention as our first impression, like personalization, especially for like Yelp, like Spotify, a lot of app, they provide personalized content based on your location or periods like search history. And then the other thing you can mention is about like how do they generate or make money through the design on the homepage as well. So again, I'm going to use the Yelp as the example to talk about like how I will using this approach when I opening up and when I start to talk about my first impression on the home screen. So so this is the first screen you will be looking after opening up the Yelp. So my first impression is definitely like I think red is Yelp's like brand color, and it was using in a lot of different treatment like the button, circle, like icons, and their menu as well. So and also you can also mention about the red color is also a very like positive like color showing some sort of like greatest vibe to promote to express some sort of happiness and positive vibe. And on the very top of this page, you can see the header, the CTA, and large banner with the image, with the branch, like fruit image. I think it's also a great way to echo to their core business, which Yelp is definitely a place where we can find the local restaurant. So they're trying to promote their business strategy on the top sessions. Uh, and because this is the app critique session, it's worth for us sometimes to mention something doesn't work really well. So if I was critiquing the Yelp design, I might say something like, however, like if you're looking at the CTA button, like search in a branch button, I feel a little bit confused because this button is very close to the main search bar you can see on the screen. So so when I talk about something doesn't work really well, usually sometimes the interviewer, they might ask me the question, if I'm the designer on Yelp, like how would you like to improve? How could I improve the design if I say something like it doesn't work really well? So usually if I was asked this kind of question, I won't give them the answer immediately. I might ask them some follow-up question to make sure that I'm on the right direction. So if they ask me the question about like how I'm going to improve this CTA button, I think the first question I might be follow up is, could you share any like user research data on how many people they are using this red like search for branch like CTA here versus the user usage data on the main search bar here. So I want to know about what is the user usage data as well as some potential like problem when people had on the when the user have for the CTA on the screen. And after, so maybe in the interview, they might share some informations, and from there, I might propose some potential like design or the answer. And if I'm so when I was going down, like you can see a main like search bar on the screen, and it's a very typical design pattern where like designer using this kind of hint text along with the search icon and the large search bar to prompt user to search something on the screen, because that is a key action the app wants people to do. And I like the way where they personalize the hint text on the search bar, because they mention something around like search for burgers, delivery, this kind of information on Yelp. So it's also a great way to highlight their core business, like to help user find or discover the restaurant nearby. And below you can see a couple of different icons, which are the shortcuts on the screen. I think you can, so from this design, you can see Yelp is trying to growing their business. So here I'm trying to mention something about their business, the business highlight. So not only Yelp want to become a place to find a restaurant, but also they want the user to explore different local business on Yelp. I like the way where they are using the shortcut here, because user can easily like click through the shortcuts and get access to these different like page or service. Because right now, like sometimes when we criticizing about these parts, not only we can talk about their design, but also we can talk about the business strategy showing like behind each design decision. And the other thing you can also mention about, like maybe there's some sort of inconsistency across the icon they are using for different surveys. I haven't taken a screenshot for another maybe like restaurant or other like icon representing for the restaurant, but definitely they have some icon inconsistency on the app, because like they don't using the cinema style, like the solid line with some shadow for the icon in other page. And like if so, we can also mention about from the home screen, we can also mention something around like they also showing some promoted app on the first screen. But even though they are showing the app ad on the screen, but they make it very clear for the user, like this is the promoted content from this kind of text they are showing under the header. So, and they are start to using a common like design pattern we already seen from the Instagram story, because they are using this kind of circle with the header with the business name. It's kind of very similar approach that Instagram does right now, like to prompt user to get a quick glance of their local business through the story, this kind of format. So it's pretty new here on the Yelp. And you definitely, you can also share like, do you think this approach works or not on the Yelp home screen, because it takes a lot of space on our home screen. So sometimes depending on the time, like maybe I will quickly like scrolling down and talk about like underneath the promotions, promoted content, you can see a lot of personalized information on Yelp, like such as the restaurant nearby. And last thing you can also mention is the button, like menu, the navigation menu here. So I think Yelp have 4 different like menu icon. First is definitely search, which is their core function that's allow user to search and find the local business. And they also have the post near the search, but I don't really use these functions, but I'm thinking that they are using the post to prompt the customer, to prompt the user to engage with their community. So the Yelp is trying to building up a community for the local people. And they also have a collection here. I think because sometimes people, they might just browse for inspiration. They might not using the service immediately. So collection is a great play for the user to save different place and save the icon or save the service. And for the more icon here, I guess it might be something related to changing the user setting or changing the user profile. So yeah, so this is my example for when I criticizing the Yelp like homepage. And we can go into our Figent file again to start with our second activity. Like I took 2 screenshots for Spotify home screen, so we can just write down a sticky note for criticizing the Spotify. And again, I will share my thoughts process if I'm criticizing the homepage for Spotify. So let's jump into the Fijian fire again. And I'm going to opening up the timer. Okay, yeah, I see a lot of great answer, great insight here. Actually some of the answer like our audience right down here, I also not haven't think about as well. So if I start criticizing the Spotify homepage, there's a couple things I will be mentioning. So from the visual design standpoint, I definitely will mention about their dark mode design, because I think before Spotify uh was created, there's less app they are using the dark mode design. So dark mode is something like become really popular in the recent year. But when the Spotify was created, there's not a lot of app using this kind of dark mode design pattern. So I think one of the reasons for them to using the dark mode is they want to highlight the cover, the album's cover, as well as the artist profile photo. So it's a great way to bring more like contrast from with the image, the colorful image, white text versus the black background. So it's definitely worth for us to talk about the overall like color thing and dark mode in the beginning. And then I will talk about like you can see like they are using they provide very personal like contents, as a lot of our audience write down on the sticky note. Like they personalize the content and using this kind of hello, like good afternoon language to bring a little bit like friendly like messaging when I open up the app based on my time. And they also start to more likely want the audience to try the podcast beyond the music, because the episode for you is bring up in the very top sessions, then the music is going down. And there's another thing I want to mention is I think this is a kind of recent design. They are using the rectangle shape with the with the song's like cover page along with the song's header, a song's name. I think this is a way for it. I think this 6 rectangle that is the most recent like song I play a lot. I listen a lot in my free time. So it provides a quick access for me to get into some most frequently lessons musics. And the below they start to promote and provide some something else, like some other like musics or podcasts I haven't listened yet in the below like content. And one thing I want to call out from, if I want to talk about their first impression, is you can see they using different shape to separate the contents along with the text here. But one small design detail is some of the rectangle or square shape they using the radio, they increase they add some radio on the corners. However, for the music, they are using the square shape without the radio. So I think here it might be worth for us to propose. You can see there's some sort of inconsistency from the design, but maybe there's some sort of the design, some sort of the reasoning this designer have to make such design decision, because they want to separate like maybe the podcast contents versus the music content through the radio through the shape of the square they showing up on the screen. So you can propose your thoughts and reasoning for why they made this small difference across the design. And again, I will also mention about like no matter like how long you stay on the home screen, there always be playing like the music controller, the audio controller above the above the menu navigation menu, because it call out the Spotify core action. They want user to like listen to different audio and stay on Spotify. And underneath we see like only 3 like menu item, which I think is very simplified design decision compared with other app, because it call out some 3 key action Spotify want to highlight on their app, which is the home screen, where it's definitely a play for people to explore different audio content, find some inspiration for an audio. And for the search, it call out their call action for the customer to prompt their user to search or find any like audio like artists or any like songs name through the search action. And your library is another action. Like if you love any album or playlist, you can save into your library. So it's easier for you to get access to some content you love without search again. So I think this is something I might be talking about through their homepage. And sometimes, like depending on the interviewer, maybe sometimes they will post some question on you. Some if I was an interviewer, maybe I will ask them a question about like, what do you think about this alert icon here? And if they ask this question, like feel free to talk about like your thoughts, like why they adding these kind of blue dots along with an icon. What does that means? Like, do you think these three icon like is consistent, or do you think these three icon really make sense like in the home screen on the home screen? So definitely like depending on like what kind of question you are going to get with interviewer, you will like dig into maybe some sort of design detail on the home screen as well. So let me jump into my presentation decks again so I can share the step 3, like how I going to prepare to talk about specific user flow. So I think like after you share your first impression on the overall like home screen design through different like visual design system, like navigation or optimization strategy, the third step you can talk about is here it is a time for us to drive the conversation. Like we have to propose a user flow we want to go through. And here is a great way for us to zoom in and dive into the detail about like visual design, interaction design, as well as showing our like product thinking when we criticizing through a specific user flow. So from the visual design standpoint, like here we can talk about like different typography, like font style, and different color, image, shape, illustrations, like icon, like padding, spacing, and overall layout. All these things you can criticize from the visual design standpoint. However, like make sure that always adds some sort of like reasoning for why they make such design decision. And the second one is like the interaction design. You can talk about like information architecture, like how they like design and rearrange the overall like information to highlight some key information the customer they are looking for, and IA information hierarchy as well, and navigation, design system, design pattern. Yeah, and especially maybe there's some typical like design patterns you can also call out and talk about like why they're using this specific design pattern here. And some micro interaction and the flow transition and the motion design. I think because right now I'm taking the screenshot, but if you are on the live critique session with the interviewer, I always share my mobile screen, so where they can see clearly about this kind of micro interaction. It's also worth for us to call out this kind of small design details on the screen when we criticizing through the interaction design perspective. And the other thing is sometimes maybe think differently, like how they designing for this like edge case, and maybe there's some sort of error message showing up on the screen. You can also criticize from the interaction design point. So the other thing I will be talking about is the product thinking. So not only like as a designer, not only we talk about the design, it's easily for most of the designer to do the critique session by critiquing something around the design. However, like I will encourage you to think more deeply around like the business side, the product thinking side, when like especially when you are talking about why the designer from that app made such design decision. So you can think about like why they make this kind of design decision, because maybe there's some business requirement, like how does this app make money, and what make this app hard to copy, and maybe there's a particular like session that call out their core business strategy or value proposition, and how does this app designing for growth. So all these things, like if you see something there, like you can critique from their business strategy standpoint as well. So I think next one I will briefly talk about, like if I'm searching a specific like cuisine, the fried chicken wing, which is my favorite on the Yelp. So when I was opening up the search bars on the Yelp, there's a page popping up and showing some search bar. And then when I was typing the fries, there is some auto suggest content showing up on my screen, so I can see some most popular like the dishes name or popular restaurants on this screen, so I don't have to type the entire like fried chickens on the search bar. So it's very easier for the customer to find something they want, and showing some most popular dishes on this kind of search, like auto suggest here. And I think here is also worth for us, like maybe to talk about what is your thoughts on the icon, like search icon here, because I definitely see some inconsistency across the icon they put on the specific search icon they put on this page versus the previous homepage. They are using different icon style. And because I'm using more like the screenshot, because I see there's some sort of micro interaction, like how they pop up this page from the search bar. We can also criticizing the micro interaction for this kind of transition as well. And then after I search like fried chicken, it's showing up results. So I think there's a very distinguished like view from the map view versus the list view. It's also a very like popular design pattern I have ever seen on other like apps like Google Map or Redfin, because it can help me to understand like higher level, like where this restaurant it is on my on the map view, as well as I can dive deep into the detail about like how far it's far away from my current location. So because like this is the time we can go into the detail. So sometimes I will zoom in into maybe the filter or the map design, and talk about like how it is a great way for the Yelp to using this kind of red pin icon. But there's so many things overlapping here, so you can zoom in out and zoom in out to see and critique why, like how they make this kind of design decision. And they are using like blue like icon on the map, where it's definitely something I saved before. So they are using this star icon along with the more like the blue color to highlight the icon compare with other red icon to help it stand out. I think that is a great way for me to easily figure out like something I saved before. And there's another thing is like maybe here you can also think about from the product thinking perspective, because on the map view there's some of the restaurant they have the name some sort of highlight the name, the restaurant name, like underneath each like pink icon. So I will be, if I'm the designer critiquing this one, I might think about maybe this is some promoted content where the restaurant they have the partnership with the Yelp, so they highlight not only in the pink but also the restaurant name on the map view. And by scrolling down, you can see a list view, and definitely on the top section, they say like sponsored result. So as a user, it's clearly for me to know about this is the restaurant let's get partnership with the Yelp, so they promote their business. However, there's something you can also talk about like as a critique, like because as you can see, the hi-fi chicken, they don't have a lot of review, and they have lower lower score based on the previous like customer feedback. So how they make this kind of design decision, how they makes the balance between more likely the user needs and business need, because the content, the restaurant they promote here is definitely not a popular or tasty restaurant, but they showing up the content first. So as a user, I have to scrolling down and then to find another maybe like tasty restaurant on my list. So you can also talk about why they make such design decision. Is there any better suggestions for balance different needs? And here, like by scrolling down, I see the all results. And one thing I'm also curious about is I'm not sure about why they prioritize the restaurant here, because I see there's, if you see the right side, you can see the distance, how far this restaurant is far away from my current location. And but in the first one, like the first restaurant is at 1.4 miles away. However, the second one is much closer. So I guess based on, and but the first one have the higher score. So I guess here they prioritize the information, the restaurant information based on the review, like how great is how best the restaurant, the taste, how tasty the restaurant it is. It's not based on my current distance. So here I might also call out their business strategy and information hierarchy. For example, like on this view is call out some key information the customer they are looking for, including the restaurant name and restaurant type, like Korean cuisine or other cuisine, and where this restaurant location, where is their locate, and what is their business hour. And because of the change of the local business after the pandemic, some of the restaurant only provides the takeout, but they don't provide the delivery. And they show this information, like the most important information on the first layer, which is easier for the user to look at and decide which restaurant they want to go next. And there's also a CTA button like call to order here. So here is, you can bring some sort of product thinking here. Like I guess the reason for the Yelp to using the call to order action here is because they want the user to stay on the Yelp, and it's also an easier way to let a restaurant increase their customer base, because after you find this is a restaurant you are very interested in, you can call the restaurant directly without like jumping into other app like Google Map, or finding their like phone information throughout other app. Or you don't have to like go into like Uber Eats or DoorDash to order something. You can call them directly. So it's a great way for this kind of small design decision, is a great way to keep the user on the Yelp without going to another platform. So if I'm creating this app, I would think from this kind of angle. And definitely you can also talk about like information hierarchy and user generate contents. Like I guess most the full photo showing up on the screen is something from the user. When the user left the review on the Yelp, so you can see some sort of user generates content here on the list view. So let's jump into our last activity, which is creating a specific like flow for Spotify. So here I'm going to using the example of some screenshot I'm taking, like searching for a song on Spotify. So we can go into our Fusion Fire again. So this is our last activity. Let me opening up the timer here. Yeah, the last one is in the bottom side of our Figma. Yeah, And again, because this is on the screenshot, it's worth for us to mention something around the motion, the micro interaction for this kind of search flow, because you can see some like page or flow transitions when you are typing like anything on the search bar. So we are running out of time here. So I definitely see a lot of great answer here for creating a specific user flow, like by searching songs on Spotify. So yeah, like a lot of our audience mentioned, there's a kind of like audio or voice button, floating button here. It's very big on the screen. So first I will mention, I think this is the floating button is a typical design pattern coming from the Google material design. So you can mention it's a little bit. And the second is like, it is also a great way for people like who are not good at like typing the text, or some other scenario, like if people, they are driving on the street, they pretty much like listening to Spotify. So for some security, like safety concern, they prompt user to like using their voice to search something other than typing on the screen. And also you can mention about some accessibility concern, for especially for the people with some like visual issue. So yeah, and here like when I searching on something, like they also have interesting content underneath, which is a recent search. So first, I think it keeps, from the visual design standpoint, they're using the smaller rectangle square shape to showing the content, showing the podcast cover page content, because it also using this kind of small radio like shape to indicate this is the audio type, which is the podcast. So it keep consistent across like different, like from the larger like cover page for the podcast, along with the smaller like cover page for the podcast. So it shows some design consistency across different page. And I also like the way where they're using like different like font size, like gray or white color with different font size to highlight the most important information. Definitely the name, the podcast name is something user looking for most. And the second one, the second layer of information, secondary information they are looking for is the audio type, and who is the creator, like who is the artist. And I see they also have a CTA clean recent search. It's also a great way to like help user like clean out their previous search, provide user more controls over what they want to leave on the screen, or what kind of information they want to save or not on their search screen. And also some privacy issue. Maybe you don't want people to see your recent search, so you can clean up before you share your home screen, you share your screen with your friends. And after you type something, like there's sometimes because I'm using the iPhone, so it naturally popping up the iPhone like keyboard on my screen. And when I was typing, it also have some auto suggest contents on my screen. So here you can also criticize from like how this kind of auto suggest content works. There's a small design, there's some design decision lots of our audience mentioned, which was great about the filter. So I like the way how they designing the filter to help user quickly narrow down the audio type. And because of the design of this kind of pill shape filter, it's easier for the designer to scale the filter, because it can be used in different like lengths of the text, so the songs, the podcast, and the show. So this kind of design is easier to scalable into different text like format. And there's another design details I might be mentioned. Like I'm also like, if I criticizing this screen, I will be asking like they are using different like icon here, the arrow icon, or some sort of like three dot overflow menu icon. So I'm curious about like what is the action look like. So maybe here I will click through these two icons and compare it. And the other thing I figure out is, so they are using the arrow icon to guide the user into the podcast, more likely about the podcast like detailed page. And they are using this kind of three dots overflow icon to prompt user out. This is the song. So it's some sort of like the playing controller on the screen if you opening up the overflow. So you can criticize like whether this approach works good or not on the screen. And yeah, and here is if I select something I really want to lessons, they using the green color to highlight the content, and also showing that this is something this is the song that is currently playing on the screen. And again, like it's showing also using this kind of play controller on the button to guide the user through the process, so the user know about like when I can pause the song or not by using these controllers. So it's a lot of things like we can talk about, like the search bar, the search bar on the top, the filter, the auto suggest content with different like icon in the information hierarchy, as well as there's always be a button, the play control on the button after you click on any song. So, and usually like because of our time limits, when I'm critiquing this specific user flow, I might go into some detail, like I might click around the icon, like the arrow icon, the overflow icon, and sometimes I even will try this kind of audio, the audio size audio button. So depending on the conversation, like you are going to have interviewer, sometimes like we might like click through like the filter or click through the page and start critiquing the interaction and the design, as well as some product thinking around each design decisions. So yeah, so I think this is the last exercise. Let's jump into our last couple slide for these app critique sessions. So yeah, again, like after we finish up our critiques, it's worth for us to summarize like how this app effectively solve the user problem we mentioned in the beginning. And also talk about some you reflection as a designer. Maybe something works really well from Yelp or Spotify, or something doesn't really work well as a designer you want to like solve. So I think I always end up my app critique session with like 3 or 4 sentence like summary. And here is some potential interview question. The interviewer they might ask you along the way. Feel free to take the screenshot, like if you think the interview question is something you can prepare like before the interview session. So from the visual design standpoint, definitely like they will ask you about, they will just randomly, or they will just point out any visual treatment like typography, shape, like different color on the screen, and talk about your thoughts. Like how do you like or dislike this approach, and how would you like to improve if you don't like this approach? And again, for the interaction design, they can basically ask everything, the UI components on the screen, like such as the filter, search bar. And they also will ask you the opinion about, like, do you like or dislike this approach? If you don't like it, how would you like to improve? And there's another question I'm often being asked during app critique is, how would you like to improve this design if you were a designer at this company? And the other part of question they might ask you is the product thinking. So I think if you've been asked this question during your app critique session, which means you don't set up the content sometimes really well at the beginning. So this is some sort of the prompts the interviewer wants you to talk a little bit about the high level context before you go into like each like user flow or home screen. So from the product thinking perspective, they may ask you a question about like how does this app make money and what is their success metric. One of the most interesting question I have ever had is like, if you were the CEO of this company, how would you like to like improve this app, or what is your priority for the upcoming roadmap? And last thing I want to say about like what is my final like tips and treat for successfully acting this app critique session. First thing is definitely practice, prepare the app in advance before you go into the app critique session. And then like if you are the designer who are really strong at anything like maybe prototyping, interaction design, or design system, or the two-side marketplace like product strategy, definitely leverage this kind of your expertise, your superpower into the app critique session. So it can make you stand out from other candidates if you have a particular like areas you have a lot of knowledge you can share. And when you are preparing this app critique session, definitely you can do the preparations for the similar app together. For example, if I'm prepared for the Yelp, I might looking at the Google Map at the same time. So sometimes I can talk about my thought on some design decision by comparing the similar design or feature between Yelp and Google Map. And the other technical thing I want to mention is definitely like trying to figure out what is the best way for you to mirror your phone screen on your laptop. And again, like during the entire sessions, like be smile like all the time, because it is also a great way for you to for the interviewer to evaluate how you are a great communicator or a great collaborator or not during this kind of app critique session. And again, like you are the person who need to drive such conversation. So if you think something you really don't have the answer, or you not sure about what this interviewer is asking you for, definitely like ask them some follow-up question. Is totally fine. And sometimes when you're doing the critique during the session, you can think beyond the app itself. Maybe you can mention like the email or notification, something beyond the app. And again, like the last thing I have to say is be confident. If you already prepared this session and prepare like at least 2 apps in advance, definitely like the app critique session will become super easy for you when you are get into the real like job interview. And thank you so much for everyone to join today's workshop, and feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn, and we can use the last like few minutes to answer any question on the Slido as well. Thank you so much. So maybe we can open up the Slido, yeah, and I can use the last few minutes to answer some top question on Slido.
Yeah, for sure. I'm just going to share my screen, but in the meantime, just want to thank you for all the insights that you've shared so far, and I hope everyone has been able to learn something so far. So I'm just going to share my screen. Yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to add them to the Slido. So I think we'll start off with, oops. Okay, yeah, can you all see my screen?
Yep.
All right, yeah, so our first question is, when preparing an app to critique, is it better to choose well-known products like Google Maps or Amazon, or another app that might be more meaningful to you?
I would like to say it depends, but if there's some very like not a well known app, but you really passionate about and you can bring a lot of insight, definitely you can prepare it. But maybe this is something you can consider, like when you are preparing 2 or 3 different apps, maybe there's one that is not well known, because sometimes for most of the interviewer, they might also choose the app they already use in their daily life. So that's the reason, like maybe you can prepare 2 or 3, but one is definitely some well-known app like Spotify, Google Map, Amazon, and Yelp.
Okay, yeah, awesome. So I guess we'll move on to our second question. Can we have the slides afterwards?
I'm not sharing my slide, but we have the recording on the YouTube, so definitely you can watch the recording after our session.
Yeah, just to jump in, we'll be posting the recording a little bit after our presentation today. So yeah, you feel free to go back and take a look at that as well. And yeah, so our next question is, what types of jobs usually have app critiques, and how does it compare to things like portfolio reviews?
That's a great question. So I think for the portfolio review, portfolio presentation, definitely every company, they will have the portfolio presentation. However, for app critique, it's slightly like not every company have have this kind of app critique session, but for some well-known company, I think Facebook, they are famous for their app critique session, because if you are in the first round of Facebook product design interview, you will have the app critique session at the very beginning. And once you get into their on-site interview, you will have another app critique session. So definitely that is another reason why you need to prepare at least 2 different apps, because I recommend all of you to critique different app, like in their first session and during your on-site session for Facebook. But for other companies, really depends on like the hiring team or some because sometimes some of the company, they don't have the standardized process. So depending on the depending on specific like requirement from this hiring manager, sometimes the hiring manager, they might ask you to do the app critique during the one-on-one. Yeah, but definitely checking with your recruiter, because the recruiter will share all this information. Like if they have the app critique session, they will tell you. But definitely like Facebook have 2 app critique for the entire for the entire product design interview loop.
Okay, yeah, awesome. And our next question, it might be a little bit similar, but what app would you recommend we use for our critique, and what would you not recommend?
So personally, like I love critiquing a Yelp, like Google Map, because you can see like they are growing their business a lot. So there's so many like new feature they are going to add. They already add into Google Map and Yelp. Because of that, you can see a lot of like inconsistent in terms of the design. So definitely, I highly recommend prepare the Google Map and Yelp. And this app, I think most of the interviewer, they are also using these 2 apps. And the second one is the Spotify. It's also a very like popular and common app for app critique. And because it's different domain, it's kind of the entertainment domain than the Yelp and Google Map. So I also highly suggest you to maybe prepare the Spotify as well. So any app I'm not personally recommend. So I think don't prepare anything around like finance, like any like Robinhood, this kind of finance app, because it will showing some sort of your personal data. And every time if you want to pick this app during your app critique session, maybe most of the interviewer, they want ask you to select Robinhood, this kind of finance app. And also some messaging app like Messenger or WeChat, this kind of app showing you personal data. And for me, like I don't love critiquing any like social media app, especially like if you are interviewing with Facebook, they won't ask you to critique any kind of app from Facebook. So I prefer like critiquing. So that is another reason I prefer critiquing like Google Map, Yelp, like Spotify, this kind of app. Yeah. And another thing is also depending on you, your expertise. One of my friend, like he is very great at design system, especially the material design guideline, and he is using the Android phone. So the app he was critiquing during his interview session is none of this app we mentioned. So he was critiquing just the native like clock on his Android phone. But because he's so familiar with the material design system, so it helped him stand out from other candidates, even just critiquing a very like native app on his phone. So maybe this is something you can consider, like if you have some actual time or patience. Yeah, but definitely for the most common one is just Yelp, Google Maps, Spotify. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. It's great to hear that we sort of went over Spotify and Yelp today, so that's great. I know we're a little bit over time right now, so if anyone has any burning questions, feel free to like give it a thumbs up, and I'll try to get to it as soon as possible. Maybe we'll just keep on taking a few more. But our next one would be, does it help to prepare a slide deck to present during the interview?
I don't know, like for this question, they are asking for an app critique or portfolio presentation. Could anyone just clarify this question a little bit? If this is for an app critique, definitely you don't have to prepare any like slide decks. You just need to figure out how you can share your like mobile screen on your laptop. But if this is a portfolio presentation session, definitely you have to prepare a presentation slide.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that sounds great. If anyone else had anything to add to this question, feel free to add it to the chat. And maybe we'll just take one last question and then we'll wrap it up for today. Okay, so how long should an app critique take and how much time should you spend on, say, each section?
So I think so usually the app critique is an hour long, and if this is an hour long session, the last 10 minutes or the last 10 to 5 minutes is the time for them to ask you some like last minute like follow-up question, or you can also ask the question to the interviewer about the job, about the company. So you only have like 15 minutes for the app critique. So I would like to say like from the high level context and the home screen, I might spend like for each session I might spend like 10 maybe the high level content I might spend like 10 minutes. And for the home screen critique, I might spend the 15 minutes. And the rest of the main content I want to talk about is the specific workflow. I might spend longer, like 20 to 25 minutes. And again, like because during the session, the interviewer, they might ask no questions. So I think the time I just share, how long I just shared is also include some interaction you might have with the interviewer. And the other thing is, I think some of the very great interviewer, they will also facilitate the time. They also will remind you about the time. So sometimes if you spend so much time on maybe criticizing the home screen, they might also give you a prompt that, okay, we think like we are pretty much we need to jump into the next one. Would you like to like critique or just pick out a flow, something like that? So some of the interview I thought they will do like this way, but most of them they might not. So make sure that you also double check with the time during the session as well. Yeah, and same thing apply for the whiteboard design challenge. I think the sometimes we will spend so much time on each step, but you need to be mindful about the time and move toward into the next step.
Okay, yeah, awesome. I think just in the interest of everyone's time, I think we'll just end it there. Yeah, so I guess if you have any remaining questions, feel free, maybe Minjun, if you're okay, they can shoot you a message on LinkedIn. But yeah, just a quick reminder before we end off that UWX is hiring for our fall 2022 term. So if you're interested in helping us plan more events, feel free to apply, and we look forward to hearing from you. And with that being said, I want to give a huge thank you to Minjun for this presentation. I know I've learned a lot, and I hope everyone else was able to take something away from what you had to share today. And yeah, so thank you all so much for coming, and hope you all have a great rest of your day.